Streaming. Okay. And send a notice out. Notice. Check to make sure we are live. We are live and alive. All right. And today we will definitely finish, if Krishna desires, chapter 87 in the Krishna book. Oh, we will definitely, if Krishna desires. Krishna doesn't knock us offline or knock us off. Anyway, so on that happy note, let me just check something. All right. 25th, yeah. 74th. Okay, good. Okay. On a happy note, we will start. All right. Chants. Okay, tonight we're going to chant the prayers to worship Tulsi. And these prayers are actually by Narottama Das Thakur. Namo Sri Krishna Priyase Namo Namah Namo Namah Sri Krishna Priyase Namo Namah Hare Krishna Siva Baba Hey Yamila Sri Radha Krishna Siva Baba Hey Yamila Sri Namo Namah Sri Krishna Priyase Namo Namah Yetomar Sharan Loy Taravachapurna Hoy Yetomar Sharan Loy Tara Pachapurna Hoy Kori Goro Vrindavana Vasi Ripat Kori Goro Jare Vrindavana Vasi Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Priyase Namo Namah Morae Avilas Vilas Kunjedi Yoras Morae Avilas Vilas Kunjedi Yoras Nayane Sada Pasi Nayane Whoops, we got something here that's going to break up. Okay. Sakirana Takura Eneve Danadara Sakirana Takura Lila Atikarone Koronija Danse Seva Tikaro Krishna Dase Koi Hey Hey Namo Radhoini Dina Krishna Dase Koi Hey Hey Namo Radhoini Athagovinda Preme Sadayena Matsi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Matsi Namo Namah Nase Krishna Prayase Namo Namah Yanigane Chapapani Brahmachatikane Jala Dani Dani Pranashanti Taksina Adipade Yanigane Chapapani Brahmachatikane Jala Dani Dani Pranashanti Pradaksina Paripade Ya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Gaur Haribo 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Also Tera Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Antakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagannathaswami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimangalasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivishesha Shanyavadi Paschacha Dejatarni. All right. So I'll read the translation. O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Shri Radha Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has their wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy, you make them a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you will also grant me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the coward damsels of Braj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may I always swim in the love of Shri Shri Radha and Govinda. And also by the circumambulation of Tulasi, all the sins that one may have committed are destroyed at every step, even the sin of killing a Brahmin. That doesn't mean you should kill a Brahmin. It just means you'll be relieved from that sin if inadvertently you killed a Brahmin. Okay, don't kill a Brahmin. Don't kill anybody. So anyway, on that happy note, let us continue reading from the Krishna book by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And we're on the 87th chapter and the final portion of the 87th chapter by Krishna's grace. I know I've been saying that for the last few days, but today we're actually going to finish the 87th chapter because we just have just a few more pages left. Okay. So, Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigadvena Maha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So let's share the screen. Here we go. And right at the end of the 87th chapter. So Prabhupada speaks here. Let me just set this up a little more. All right, Prabhupada. Okay. The atheistic Sankhyaite philosophers will, of course, offer their arguments that the material cosmic manifestation is due to Prakriti and Purusha, material nature and the living entity, or the material cause and effective cause. So, in other words, Sankhya philosophy means, the word Sankhya means to count. So basically, atheistic Sankhya philosophy means to analyze the material elements and think that they are the cause of everything, and they even cause the living entity to exist. And everything happens by chance, by probability and chance. But we believe here, but Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is the cause of both the material and the effective causes. Effective causes means material ingredients and that what shapes the material ingredients. In other words, Krishna is the source of the material ingredients, and then Krishna shapes the material ingredients and puts the souls into the material ingredients once he shapes them through the demigods. Prakriti and Purusha are not the ultimate cause. Superficially, it appears that a child is born due to the combination of the father and mother, but the ultimate cause of both the father and mother is Krishna. He is therefore the original cause, or the cause of all causes, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. That's the first verse. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachinanda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karna Karna. Both the Supreme Lord, the living entities, enter into the material nature. The Supreme Lord Krishna, by one of his plenary expansions, manifests as Karanadaksha Vishnu. That's the Mahavishnu. As Prabhupada says here, the Mahavishnu, the gigantic Vishnu form, lying in the causal ocean. Then from that gigantic form of Mahavishnu, Krishna expands as Garbhodakshay Vishnu and enters into every universe. From him, Lord Brahma comes, and also there's a Kshirodakshay Vishnu who comes from him. That's Vishnu, and Shiva comes from him. Vishnu as Kshirodakshay Vishnu, that means the Lord in Shira, that means milk. But anyway, he enters into the hearts, that means the Lord in the heart, of all living entities, as well as into all material elements, including the atom. The Brahma Samhita says, Anantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. That's Brahma Samhita 5:35. The Lord is within this universe and also within every atom. The living entity has a small material body taken in various species of form. And similarly, the whole universe is but the material body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This body is described in the Shastras as Virat Rupa. That means universal form. Got it? Virat Rupa. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we see one manifestation of that Virat Rupa in the 11th chapter. The 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is entitled The Universal Form. As the individual living entity maintains his particular body, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains the whole cosmic creation, entering within it. As soon as the individual living entity leaves the material body, the body is immediately annihilated. And similarly, as soon as Lord Vishnu leaves the cosmic manifestation, everything is annihilated. So that's the universal body. Okay, got it. Therefore, only when the individual living entity surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is his liberation from material existence possible. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Mame vaye prapajante mayam etam taranti te. So the rest of this is Daiva Yeshu Gunamaye Mama Eva Ye Prapajante. Daiva Mama Eva Ye Prapajante Maya Maitan Tarantite. Daiva Yeshu Gunamaye Mama Maya the Rachya. That's the first two lines. Mama Eva Ye Prapajante Maya Maitan Tarantite. This material energy is impossible to overcome, but one who surrenders unto me, Krishna says, can easily cross beyond it. Surrendering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and nothing else is therefore the cause of liberation. How the living entity becomes liberated from the modes of material nature after surrendering into the Supreme Personality of Godhead is illustrated by the example of a sleeping man within a room. When a man is sleeping, everyone sees that he is present within the room, but actually the man himself is not within that body. For while sleeping, a man forgets his bodily existence, although others may see that his body is present. Similarly, a liberated person engaged in devotional service to the Lord may be seen by others to be engaged in the household duties of the material world, but since his consciousness is fixed in Krishna, he does not live within this world. In other words, you see his body, you see him doing things, and he understands he's not doing any of those things. He is with Krishna. And at the same time, he's aware of what's happening in the body. It's not exactly like the sleeping condition. He's aware of what's happening in the body because he's using the body in Krishna service. His engagements are different, exactly as the sleeping man's engagements are different from his bodily engagements. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that a devotee engaged full-time in the transcendental loving service of the Lord has already surpassed the influence of the three modes of material nature. He is already situated in the Brahman platform and is in the transcendental realm, although he appears to be living within the body or within the material world. In this connection, that's called Jivan Mukta. He appears to be in the material world. Actually, Prabhupada is going to use those terms in the next paragraph. In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami states in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the person whose only desires to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead may be situated in any condition in the material world, but he is to be understood as Jivan Mukta, that is to say, he is to be, that's the term I just used, he is to be considered liberated while living within the body of material world. The conclusion, therefore, is that a person fully engaged in Krishna consciousness is a liberated person. Such a person actually has nothing to do with his material body or the material world. Those who are not in Krishna consciousness are called karmis and jnanis, and they hover on the bodily and mental platforms and thus are not liberated. This situation is called Kaivalya Nirasta Yoni. That means Kaivalya only Nirasta Yoni. But a person situated in the transcendental platform is freed from the repetition of birth and death. In other words, someone is born in this world and he's identifying with this world. That's what Kaivalya Nirasta Yoni means. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter. Simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, one becomes free from the chains of repetition of birth and death, and after quitting his present body, goes back home, back to Godhead. So if you're fully convinced, fully realized in the transcendental nature of the Lord, then you don't have to take birth again. This is the conclusion of all the Vedas. Thus, after understanding the prayers offered by the personified Vedas, one should surrender unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And finally, thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 87th chapter of Krishna, prayers by the personified Vedas. So we finished the 87th chapter. Now we're going to go on to the 88th chapter. And as I said before, there are 90 chapters in the Krishna book. So we're almost finished. We just went through the largest chapter in the Krishna book. We spent 8.5 days going through that chapter. Okay, this next story is quite interesting and actually a little humorous. The deliverance of Lord Shiva. Now, Lord Shiva, of course, is the greatest devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he is known, just to explain a little bit about him, he's an expansion of the Lord, but he's not Vishnu Tattva. He's in a special category of his own. He's not a jiva soul like us, and he's not God in the same way that Krishna is God, but he's sort of somewhere in between. The example given in the Brahma Samhita is like if you have yogurt that's made from milk, the milk represents, or the Lord is represented, Krishna is represented by the milk, and Lord Shiva is represented by the yogurt. In other words, you can take milk, convert it to yogurt, but you can't take yogurt and convert it to milk. So let's read the story. So Lord Shiva, another point is Lord Shiva is Ashutosh. It means he's very easily pleased and very easily angered. And sometimes he gives benedictions that he's not happy with later on. And we're going to read about one such benediction. As a great devotee of Krishna, King Parikshit was already liberated, but for clarification, he was asking various questions of Shukadeva Goswami. In the previous chapter, King Parikshit's question was, what is the ultimate goal of the Vedas? And Shukadeva Goswami explained the matter, giving authoritative descriptions from the disciplic succession from Sanatana down to Narayana Rishi, Narada, Vyasadeva, and then Shukadeva himself. The conclusion was that devotional service or bhakti is the ultimate goal of the Vedas. A neophyte devotee may question if the ultimate goal of life or the conclusion of the Vedas is to elevate oneself to the platform of devotional service, then why is it observed that a devotee of Lord Vishnu is generally not very prosperous materially, whereas a devotee of Lord Shiva is found to be very opulent? Wow, good question. Of course, this should not be an impetus for all of you to give up your worship of Krishna and to worship Lord Shiva instead, because the opulence that Lord Shiva gives you is going to be the cause of your anxiety. In order to clarify this matter, Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadeva Goswami, my dear Shukadeva Goswami, it is generally found that those who engage in the worship of Lord Shiva, whether a human, demoniac, or demigod society, become materially very opulent, although Lord Shiva himself lives just like a poverty-stricken person. On the other hand, the devotees of Lord Vishnu, who is the controller of the goddess of fortune, do not appear very prosperous, and sometimes they're even found living without any material opulence at all. Lord Shiva lives underneath a tree or in the snow of the Himalaya mountains. He does not even construct a house for himself, but still the worshippers of Lord Shiva are very rich. Krishna, or Lord Vishnu, however, lives very opulently, whether in Vaikuntha or in the material world. But his devotees appear poverty-stricken. Why is this so? Good question. Maharaj Parikshit's question is very intelligent. The two classes of devotees, namely the devotees of Lord Shiva and the devotees of Lord Vishnu, are always in disagreement. Even today in India, these two classes of devotees still criticize each other, and especially in South India, the followers of Ramanujacharya and the followers of Shankaracharya hold occasional meetings for understanding the Vedic conclusion. And generally, the followers of Ramanujacharya come out victorious in such meetings. So Parikshit Maharaj wanted to clarify the situation by asking this question of Shukadeva Goswami, that Lord Shiva lives as a poor man, although his devotees appear very opulent, whereas Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu is always opulent, and yet his devotees appear poverty-stricken, is a situation which appears contradictory and puzzling to a discriminating person. This is actually a very important question, especially for those of you from India or Indian background. Replying to King Parikshit's inquiry, Shukadeva Goswami said that Lord Shiva is the master of the material energy. The material energy is represented by Goddess Durga, and because Lord Shiva happens to be her husband, Goddess Durga is completely under his subjugation. Thus, Lord Shiva is understood to be the master of the material energy. The material energy is manifested in three qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and therefore Lord Shiva is the master of these three qualities. Although he is in association with these qualities for the benefit of the conditioned soul, Lord Shiva is their director and is not affected. In other words, although the conditioned soul is affected by the three qualities, Lord Shiva, being their master, is not. So, in other words, because I'm just going to unpack it a little more, Lord Shiva is not affected by these three qualities of the material world because he's a devotee of Krishna. And being a devotee of Krishna, he's not at all interested. He's detached, nirapeksha, neutral towards this material world. And because of that, he doesn't take the trouble to enjoy materially. Got it? Common sense. From the statements of Shukadeva Goswami, we can understand that the effects of worshiping different demigods are not, as some less intelligent persons suppose, the same as the effects of worshiping Lord Vishnu. Shukadeva Goswami clearly states that by worshiping Lord Shiva, one achieves one reward, whereas by worshiping Lord Vishnu, one achieves a different reward. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Those who worship the different demigods achieve the desired results the respective demigods can reward. Similarly, those who worship the material energy receive the suitable reward for such activities, and those who worship the Pitris receive similar results. Pitris means the forefathers. But those who engage in devotional service or worship of the Supreme Lord Vishnu or Krishna go to the Vaikuntha planets or Krishna Loka. One cannot approach the transcendental region or Paravyoma, the spiritual sky, by worshiping Lord Shiva or Brahma or any other demigod. Of course, Yanti Devada, Vratan Devan Pitrin, Yanti Pratin Vritaha, Utani Yanti Bhuteja, Yanti Mam, Yajino Imam. Whereas Krishna says in the Gita, those who worship the demigods go to the demigods, those who worship the forefathers go to the forefathers, those who worship the ghosts and spirits go to the ghosts and spirits, and those who worship me, Krishna says, go to him. Since this material world is a product of three qualities of material nature, all varieties of manifestations come from these three qualities. Remember that: goodness, passion, and ignorance. With the aid of materialistic science, modern civilization has created many machines and comforts, yet there are only varieties of the interactions of the three material qualities. Sometimes I use the example of the three primary colors, that whatever other color you see can be manifested by combining the three primary colors in different quantities or different ratios, let's say. And that's why a television works, because television doesn't have actually all the different colors. It has basically three colors. And you look really, really close, at the computer screen, the television screen, or whatever you're watching, or whatever I'm looking at right now, you'll see what's called pixels. And those pixels are divided into 3 different types. Really interesting. And the combination of those 3 types and which pixels, that means little lights, are lit and which pixels, little lights, are not lit, determine what color your eye will perceive. So in other words, whatever you see in this world is a different permutation and combination of the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Although the devotees of Lord Shiva are able to obtain many material acquisitions, we should know that such devotees are simply collecting products manufactured by the 3 qualities. The 3 qualities are again subdivided into 16, namely the 10 senses. This is Sankhya, actually, which means counting or analyzing. Namely the 10 senses, 5 working senses, 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the mind, and the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and sky. These 16 items are extensions of the 3 qualities. Material happiness or opulence means gratification of the senses, especially the genitals, the tongue, and the mind. By exercising our minds, we create many pleasurable things just for enjoyment by the genitals and the tongue. The opulence of a person within this material world is estimated in terms of his exercise of the genitals and the tongue, or in other words, how well he is able to utilize his sexual capacities. Prabhupada is really explicit. And how well he is able to satisfy his fastidious taste by eating palatable dishes. Material advancement of civilization necessitates creating objects of enjoyment by mental concoction just to become happy on the basis of these 2 principles: pleasures for the genitals and pleasures for the tongue. And, there's secondary pleasures, other pleasures we get from the other senses, like seeing certain things. You look and see a beautiful mountain or the seashore, but it's really secondary for most people to the pleasures from the genitals and the tongue. Tongue is so important. That's why in Krishna consciousness, we have this trick. We give people prasadam, and that way their tongue is satisfied, and they're tricked into performing devotional service. Pretty cool trick. Herein lies the answer to King Parikshit's question to Shukadeva Goswami as to why the worshippers of Lord Shiva are so opulent. The devotees of Lord Shiva are opulent only in terms of the material qualities. Factually, such so-called advancement of civilization is the cause of entanglement in material existence. In other words, the more you have in this world, the more anxiety you have, the more you have to work to maintain it or be conscious of it. It doesn't give you happiness, because happiness comes from within. And also, even material happiness is based upon your karma. You're going to have a certain amount of material happiness based upon your previous activities, which is your present karma. So basically, whatever you do, you're going to have that amount of happiness. You can have that amount of happiness driving a Porsche. It's a fancy car if you don't know about that. Or you can have the same amount of happiness driving, what else? A Volkswagen. It is actually, or Yugo. Yugo was actually an old car they used to make, and maybe still make, in Yugoslavia, or what's called Serbia today. And it is so dilapidated. It is like a box, a cardboard box with wheels on it. And I've seen them. It's like, I don't know if anyone's ever seen that old Flintstone movie where someone propels the car, that is Fred Flintstone, propels the car by sticking his feet out underneath the floorboards and walking or running, and that way the car gets propelled. And then those cars are almost like that. It is actually not advancement, but degradation. The conclusion is that because Lord Shiva is the master of the 3 qualities, his devotees are given things manufactured by the interaction of these qualities for the satisfaction of the senses, and the people don't get happy. In the Bhagavad Gita, however, we get instruction from Lord Shiva that one has to transcend the qualitative existence, nirgun, nistrigunya guno bhavarjuna. Of course, that's that verse. Was that Trigunya Vishya Veda Nishtraigunya Varjana, Nirdwandvo Nidrsavasto, Niryogikshem. Krishna says to Arjuna, you have to rise above these three modes and become established in the self. The mission of human life is to become transcendental to three qualities. Unless one is Nishtrai Gunya, he cannot get free from material entanglement. In other words, favors received by Lord Shiva are not actually beneficial to the conditioned souls, although materially such facilities seem opulent. They just cause you more anxiety. Hard work, pavarga, hard work, foaming to the mouth, fainting, and ultimately Maharichu, death. Shukadeva Goswami continued, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is transcendental to three qualities of material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord states that anyone who surrenders unto him surpasses the control of the three qualities of material nature. That's the verse. Therefore, since Hari's devotees are transcendental to the control of the three material qualities, certainly he himself is transcendental. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is therefore stated that Hari, or Krishna, is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are two kinds of prakritis, or potencies, that means energies Krishna has, namely the internal potency and the external potency, and Krishna is the overlord of both. Of course, to be more specific, there's a third potency, which is called Kshetragyakya, which is the living entity who is the knower of the body, or the knower of the prakriti that's within the material energy or the spiritual energy. So, but actually, in one sense, the living entity can be classified under the spiritual potency too, because he's also spiritual, but he can choose, he or she can choose to identify with the material potency. So here, Krishna is the overlord of both. He is Sarva Drik, or the overseer of all the actions of the internal and external potencies, and he is also described as Upadrashta, the supreme advisor. Because he is the supreme advisor, he is above all the demigods who merely follow the directions of the supreme advisor. As such, if one directly follows the instructions of the Supreme Lord as inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then one gradually becomes nirguna, or above the interactions of the material qualities. To be nirguna means to be bereft of material opulences, because, as we have explained, material opulence means an increase of actions and reactions of the three material qualities. So the question is, sometimes we do see devotees who apparently are very rich. Why is that? Why do we see devotees that are apparently rich if a devotee is supposed to be without material opulence? Because the devotee understands what? The wealth that he supposedly has, he doesn't have. It belongs to Krishna. So in other words, he doesn't have material opulence. He may apparently have material opulence, but internally, it does not lay claim to that material opulence, because he understands the material opulence belongs to Krishna. By worshiping the Supreme Personality of God, instead of being puffed up with material opulences, one becomes enriched with spiritual advancement of knowledge and Krishna consciousness. To become nirguna, nirguna means without the modes of nature, means to achieve eternal peace, fearlessness, religiousness, knowledge, and renunciation. Isn't that what we want? We want to be peaceful, fearless, connected to Krishna, religious. We want to know things, and we don't want to be attached to things in this world, because we're going to lose them anyway. That's right. Hate to tell you that. Whatever you have in this world, money, house, family members, gone. Just like in my own life, I've seen my whole family is gone. Dead and gone, except for my brother. I mean, everybody. My mother, my father, aunt, uncle, grandparents, gone. They're gone. And if I was attached, I'd be lamenting. But I love them. But at the same time, my manifestation, or the manifestation of love, is that I want them to become Krishna conscious, not that I want them to be there for my enjoyment. That is exploitation. So that's real renunciation. All these are symptoms of becoming free from the contamination of the material qualities. Shukadeva Goswami, in answering Parikshit Maharaj's question, went on to cite a historical instance regarding Parikshit Maharaj's grandfather, King Yudhishthira. He said that after finishing the Ashvamedha sacrifice in the great sacrificial arena, King Yudhishthira, in the presence of the great authorities, inquired from Lord Shiva on that very point. So in other words, Shukadeva Goswami is making reference to Krishna answering the same question that was posed by Yudhishthira Maharaj. So here's the point. How is it the devotees of Lord Shiva become materially opulent, whereas the devotees of Lord Vishnu do not? Shukadeva Goswami specifically referred to King Yudhishthira as your grandfather, so that Maharaj Parikshit would be encouraged to think that he was related to Krishna and that his grandfathers were intimately connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although by nature Krishna is always very satisfied, when Maharaj Yudhishthira asked this question, the Lord became even more satisfied, because this question and its answer would bear a great meaning for the entire Krishna conscious society. Whenever Lord Krishna speaks about something to a specific devotee, it is meant not only for that devotee, but for all devotees, indeed for the entire human society, like the Bhagavad Gita. Instructions by the Supreme Personality of Godhead are important even to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the other demigods. And if one does not take advantage of the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who descends within this material world for the benefit of all living entities, he is certainly very unfortunate. Lord Krishna answered the question of Maharaj Yudhishthira as follows. If I especially favor a devotee and especially wish to care for him, the first thing I do is take away his riches. Oh no. However, if you realize that everything belongs to Krishna, then basically you don't have to worry about it. How about that? But if you're thinking, this is mine. So when the devotee becomes penniless, a penniless pauper is put into a comparatively poverty-stricken position. His relatives and family members no longer take interest in him, and in most cases, they give up their connection with him. The devotee then becomes doubly unhappy. Oh my God. First of all, the devotee becomes unhappy because his riches have been taken away by Krishna, and he is made even more unhappy when his relatives desert him because of his poverty. We should note, however, that when a devotee falls into a miserable condition in this way, it is not due to past impious activities known as karma phala, that means the fruits of activities. The poverty of the devotee is a creation of the personality of Godhead. Similarly, when a devotee becomes materially opulent, that is also not due to his pious activities. In either case, whether the devotee becomes poor or richer, the arrangement is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This arrangement is especially made by Krishna for his devotee, just to make him completely dependent upon him and to free him from all material obligations. He can then concentrate his energies, mind and body, everything for the service of the Lord. And that is pure devotional service. It's actually a famous verse. Yashaham anugunami hurishe taddanam shanaya. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is therefore explained, Sarvapati Veneramuktam. It's also mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita 19:170, which means being freed from all designations. Works performed for family, society, community, nation, or humanity are all designated. I belong to this society. I belong to this community. I belong to this nation. I belong to this species of life. Speciesism. It's interesting. There's feminism, there's speciesism, there's nationalism, and, even, religionism, when one becomes attached to identifying himself or herself as a member of a particular religion and everybody else is an outsider. Such identities are all merely designations. When, by the grace of the Lord, a devotee is freed from all designations, his devotional service is actually nice karma. In other words, there's no karma to it. Jnanis are very much attracted by the position. Jnanis means mental speculators, are very much attracted to the position of Naishkarmya, in which one's activities no longer have any material effect. In other words, mental speculators want to come to that point, but devotees automatically come to that point. The devotee's activities are freed from material effects, and so these activities are no longer in the category of karma palam. That means the fruits of activity, or as Prabhupada says, fruitive activities. As explained before by the personified Vedas, the happiness and distress of a devotee are produced by the personality of God, and the devotee therefore does not care whether he is in happiness or in distress, materially happiness and distress. He doesn't care whether he's connected to Krishna and happy, but that's his ultimate happiness. He goes on with his duties and executing devotional service. Although his behavior seems to be subject to the actions and reactions of fruitive activities, he is actually freed from the results of action. So even externally, you may look at him and say, well, it's just like everybody else, but you don't know what's actually happening on the karmic level or the akarmic level without karma and his consciousness. You don't know what's happening internally or in any way with a devotee. You're just looking at him as an ordinary person and projecting your own conceptions upon a great devotee. And maybe question why a devotee is put into such tribulation by the personality of Godhead. The answer is that this kind of arrangement by the Lord is just like a father's son sometimes becoming unkind to his sons, because the devotee is a surrendered soul and is taken charge of by the Supreme Lord. Whatever condition of life the Lord puts him in, whether one of distress or of happiness, it is to be understood that behind this arrangement is a large plan designed by the personality of Godhead. For example, Lord Krishna put the Pandavas into a distress condition so acute that even grandfather Bhishma could not comprehend how such distress could occur. He lamented that although the whole Pandava family was headed by King Yudhisthira, the most pious king, and protected by two great warriors, Bhima and Arjuna, and although above all the Pandavas were all intimate friends and relatives of Lord Krishna, they still had to undergo such tribulations. Later, however, it was proved that it was planned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as part of his great mission to annihilate the miscreants and protect the devotees, and also to glorify the devotees. So when a devotee is put into a distressful condition, the devotee takes shelter of Krishna, just like the story of Draupadi. So we have, that's a famous story in the Mahabharata, that the Kurus, they actually attempted, that is, Dushashan, attempted to disrobe Draupadi in a public assembly because there's a gambling match and Yudhisthira he lost his intelligence and he gambled his wife. And so they were going to disrobe her in public. So she lost the protection of her husbands. She had 5. So she lost the protection of her husbands. And then she realized what? Nobody else can protect me other than Krishna. So when Dushashan tried to disrobe her, pull off her garment, she cried out ultimately when she saw that she couldn't fight against this big, muscle-bound thug, that she cried out to Krishna. And then when she started crying out to Krishna, Krishna provided unlimited cloth. Another question may be raised, what is the difference between a devotee and a common man? Since both are put into different kinds of happiness and distressful conditions. The devotee, by the arrangement of this personality of God, and the common man, as a result of his past deeds, it appears to be the same. How is the devotee any better than the ordinary karmi? The answer is that the karmis and the devotees are not on the same level. In whatever condition of life the karmi may be, he continues in the cycle of birth and death because the seed of karma, or fruit of activity, is there, and it fructifies whenever there is an opportunity. By the law of karma, a common man is perpetually engaged in repeated birth and death, whereas a devotee's distress and happiness, not being under the laws of karma, are part of a temporary arrangement by the Supreme Lord, which does not entangle the devotee. Such an arrangement is made by the Lord only to serve a temporary purpose. If a karmi performs auspicious acts, he is elevated to the heavenly planets, and if he acts impiously, he is put into a hellish condition. But whether a devotee acts in a so-called pious or impious manner, he is neither elevated nor degraded, but is transferred to the spiritual kingdom. Haribol. Therefore, a devotee's happiness and distress, and a karmi means someone who's not a devotee, who just is accruing karma. Happiness and distress are not on the same level. This fact is corroborated by a speech by Yamaraj to his servants in connection with the liberation of Ajamil. That's the Bhagavatam story. Yamaraj advised his followers that they should approach only those persons who have never uttered the holy name of the Lord or remember the form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord. Yamaraj also advised his servants never to approach the devotees. On the contrary, he instructed his messengers, Yamaraj is the Lord of death. It drags you out of your body, and he knows when you've been good or bad. So he rewards you. That is, on the contrary, he instructed his messengers that if they meet a devotee, they should offer their respectful obeisances. So there's no question of a devotee's being promoted or degraded within this material world, as there's a gulf of difference between the punishment awarded by the mother and the punishment awarded by an enemy. So a devotee's distress is not the same as the distress of a common karmi. And I remember that when I was suffering from my kidney stone. I remember it was Krishna's arrangement, and I didn't think it was due to something I did bad. I understood it was due to Krishna's purifying me. Purification, that doesn't mean that we torture people and tell people it's purification. We torture the other devotees. Okay, so on that happy note, we're going to stop here, and we never got to the story. We'll get to the story hopefully tomorrow about Krishna saving Lord Shiva. So we're going to take some questions from you all after we allow you to unmute yourselves. So who has a question about this? Very interesting topics today about the Lord favoring people sometimes by taking things away. But don't worry. If you understand what? Ishabashamidam sarvam yatkincha jagadam jagatena chakshena bunjita. That if you understand everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme Lord and it's meant to be used for him, for in his service. If you dovetail your whole life in Krishna's service, then Krishna won't take it away. But if you think you own something, ultimately it gets taken away, whether you're a devotee or not a devotee. Ultimately, it does get taken away. Like even our friend Elon Musk, he ultimately will die. You may say in the meantime he's enjoying, but ultimately it's going to be a terrible experience, and he's definitely not going to go back to God at all, unless he surrenders. You know, he always has that opportunity at the last moment. He can just come to me, offer everything, his whole company, everything to me, and I'll engage in Krishna's service, and then he can go back to God. And how about that? That's an offering that's too good for him to refuse. So anybody have any questions? Raise your hand, type in the chat window, or unmute yourself. This is your opportunity to ask questions. No one. That is interesting. Oh, question. Okay, here's Sita Sundari. Where does the balance go between accepting what happens as Krishna's purification, our own responsibility for our own life? That's actually a good point. If we are in control of something and we do something wrong, don't blame it on Krishna. Yes, you're responsible. If you're so foolish, let's say if you're driving a car and you have an accident and you're not wearing your seatbelt, and say, well, just Krishna didn't want me to wear my seatbelt. That means you're a rascal. So no, if something's within our control, that we can control something, then we can't really blame Krishna for that. If we act foolishly, just like Prabhupada one time stated, when devotees got in a car accident, devotees had fallen asleep while they were driving the car, and some devotees passed away. And one devotee said to Prabhupada, it was Krishna's mercy. And Prabhupada said, no, wasn't Krishna's mercy, it was their foolishness. So it's a difference. So one has to have some discrimination. Yes, we are responsible. And also, if we're put in a difficult situation, a dangerous situation, get away, protect yourself. If you just sit there and just let yourself get tortured, when you have the opportunity to escape from that particular situation, then it's your foolishness. We're not like so many, there's a branch of Christianity or people who are Christians who believe in self-flagellation, beating yourself to somehow or other discover that you're not the body. That is not part of our practice in Krishna consciousness. Sadhana bhakti, just everybody whip themselves. No, we don't voluntarily put ourselves in a position of poverty. But if something happens outside of our control, then we understand it's Krishna. Yomam pashati sarvatra sarvam chimayu pashati tashaham na pranashyasmi sacha me na pranashyati. Krishna says, one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. So we have to see Krishna everywhere, but also we have some responsibility. There's 5 factors of action. Okay, good question. So who else has a question? This is your opportunity. Come on. We got at least 31 people watching. Someone must have a question. No? Well, if no one has a question. Oh, here's another one. Hare Krishna Gurudev. Does Krishna take away the wealth of pure devotees only? Pure devotees don't have wealth. They understand everything belongs to Krishna, and they're just using what Krishna has given them to use in his service. Krishna will do what is best for his devotee, whether you are a pure devotee or an immature devotee, whether you're a Kanishta Adhikari or whether you're an Uttama Adhikari. I mean, let's have the example, take the example of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada tried to be successful materially. He had his pharmaceutical business, and it was a failure. I mean, he lost everything. And he tried to make his family Krishna conscious. And his wife not only refused, but his wife sold his Bhagavatams for tea biscuits and told Prabhupada that she would prefer tea to him. Those are loving words. Imagine someone asked their wife, what do you like better, tea or me? Which would you rather have? You just have a choice of one of the two. And if the wife says, I like tea better than you, it's time to head for the hills. So anyway, so the point is with Prabhupada, Krishna made his business fail, he made his marriage fail. I mean, that's a pretty heavy thing in India. I mean, in America, marriages fail all the time. But and Prabhupada basically was penniless, but he still continued serving. Tateno kampam sushamikshmana bhujanavatma kritam vipakam ridvag lapurvir vidadam namaste jiveta yo muktipade sadayavak. In spite of seeing all these reverses, he didn't blame Krishna, but he saw Krishna, and then he still continued serving, printing his books with nothing, no money. He couldn't even afford to eat when he was printing his books. Just like every day, somehow or other, he would get enough money to go to the printer. He would buy the paper and transport the paper to the printer himself. Poverty-stricken, basically. And his friends and relatives didn't want anything to do with him. And Prabhupada took that as Krishna's indication that Krishna wanted him to go to the Western world. Prabhupada was already a pure devotee, but Krishna wanted him to the Western world. And even Prabhupada tried a preaching center in a place called Jhansi in India, and that was taken away due to some political intrigue. And Krishna just basically, by giving Prabhupada these difficulties, directed Prabhupada in a certain direction. So even pure devotees. So, in other words, Krishna does what is best. What to speak of the Pandavas, what to speak of Draupadi, Krishna does what is best for his pastimes and for the devotees' welfare. Okay, one more question. Hare Krishna. Early in the movement, whoops. Here's a question here. So, wait a second. Early in the movement, devotees were critical of the position of Lord Shiva. Even we know sometimes see devotees making derogatory comments about Lord Shiva. What would be the advice for them? Be careful, Lord Shiva is a great devotee. If you make a derogatory comment about Lord Shiva, you're committing a mad elephant offense. We offer our obeisances to Lord Shiva because he's the greatest devotee of the Lord, but he's not God, just like we offer obeisances to Prabhupada. Prabhupada's not God. We offer the same respect that God has because he's the representative, most intimate representative of God. At one point, the devotees were saying that Prabhupada was God. This is years and years ago. I remember that. And Prabhupada got so angry when the devotees were talking like that. Srila Prabhupada's purport applied to neophyte devotees also? Yes, to everybody. Everything, neophyte devotees, Krishna may take things away so that they make further progress, or Krishna may give them things. Krishna does what's best. The main thing is Krishna does what's best. So, but better not to be a neophyte. So it's kind of worrisome. Everything is the Lord's arrangement in their lives. Is there a subtle difference between nice karma and akarma and nice karma? Well, the word akarma can also mean acting without any karmic result. It also means without karma, and nice karma just means without karma. Anyway, so there's a little bit of difference. Like activities, a little bit of difference, but basically the same. Akarma, nice karma, basically means the same thing. Okay, on that happy note, thank you all very much. We are going to see you all tomorrow.